Today's lesson, we're going to talk more about the basic word problems when asked to write a linear equation. So before, you guys were given graphs. So you might get something that looks like this. And I might draw a line and I'll say, write the equation from that graph. Today's going to be different because I'm just going to give you some information from that picture. So I'm not actually going to draw the picture for you. And I'm going to ask you to use that information to create an equation. So there's really three cases of problems. So we'll call the first case 1, and that's the easiest. Case 2, that's kind of medium. It's not a lot of work, but it is a little bit of work. And then case 3, and that's the one that's a little tedious. So they get a little bit more in depth each case we go. So case 1 is when I'll be really nice, and I'll give you the two things that you need to graph a line. I will actually tell you the slope and the beginning, or the y-intercept. So I actually tell you both things. If I do that, you actually have no work to do because I gave you the two components to the answer. So all you have to do is set up your slope-intercept form, since that's how we present our equations. I usually just write blank x plus blank, just to start off. And then you know that m should be in front of x, and your y-intercept should be the second in the order. And you just substitute what I tell you. So it says write the equation of a line. Okay, that means you're going to have an equal sign, whose y-intercept is -3, whose slope is -5. So because I gave you both key components, you can actually just set up the answer. So your slope will come first, and your y-intercept comes last. So you can actually just write -3 if you'd like. You don't have to use the plus sign. And that's the answer. So it's a little different than when I drew a picture of it and asked you to write it. Now I'm just telling you the information that's on the picture, and it saves you a little bit of time that way. So that's a case 1. Not too much to it. Case 2 is when I'll be kind of nice and I'll give you the slope, but I will keep the y-intercept a secret. But I do have to give you something, so what I'll do is I'll give you a point that's on the line. So it's an ordered pair that the line crosses through. And you can actually work with that to figure out the y-intercept and then write the whole equation. So the easiest formula, in my opinion, for this is the point-slope formula. And that looks like this. And obviously, the reason that's my preference is because it's called the point-slope formula. So it makes sense to use it if you have a point and a slope. So we're going to take these steps and apply them to the example problem over here. So step 1 says label x1 and y1 in your ordered pair. So we're going to write x1 and y1. And the slope needs to be labeled m. So that is step 1. Step 2 says substitute these values into the formula. So you will be putting these three numbers in for your y1, your m, and your x1. So we're going to set that up. So a lot of times I tell my kids to write y minus, leave a space, equals, leave a space for slope, and then you'll copy x minus, you need to leave one more space. So usually I tell my kids, just set that up for right now, and then you have to decide which numbers go where. So in my order, y1 should come first, so 1 should be first. Your slope should always be in the middle. And your x1 actually goes last. So it should be set up like that. So that's step 2. Step 3 says solve for y. So if I asked you to simplify this equation and then solve it, the first thing you would need to do is distribute. So we're going to do that. And then the only other thing I need to do is I just want to see y over here, so I'm going to need to remove that -1 by adding. So my answer is 1/2 x minus 1. So if you look at your answer, that's pretty much the format that we've been writing our answers in. It matches the format up here. So I have my y's, my x's, and my constants. Y's, x's, constants. So as long as you solve this equation, get y by itself basically, you will end up with slope-intercept form, which is your goal. Right. Case 3 is the most tedious case, so I'm actually not telling you the slope or the y-intercept, but I will give you 2 points. So these 2 points are on my line. So we're going to call them x1, y1, x2, y2. So step 1 says use the slope formula to get the slope. So we're going to have to do 7 minus 3 over 4 minus 2. And that's going to give me an answer of 4 over 2, which simplifies to 2. So now I have my slope. That'll be important. I will also need to pick one of these points. So normally step 2, it says pick one of the points and label it x1, y1. We did that earlier when we computed the slope, but it really doesn't matter which ordered pair you pick. So let's say that you felt like using this ordered pair. Perfectly fine. Either one will get you the same answer. So we're going to take the point and the slope, and we're going to plug it into y minus space equals slope times x minus x1. So we're going to plug those numbers into that formula, just like we did in the case 2. So it looks like 7 will have to go in the first space, because you always want your y's together. Your slope, of course, goes in the middle. That means 4 has to go last. And then we're just going to finish it exactly like we did above. If I add 7 to -8, I get -1. And look at that. Y, x, y-intercept. That's exactly how we want our answer to look. So on the back, we have a little bit of a mix. And what we need to do is first identify the case, and then 2, go ahead and go about the steps for that case. So example 1 says, write the equation. So you know your answer is going to have an equal sign. Write the equation of a line containing the points 5, 5, and 6, 6. So this is a case 3. So case 3 says you have to subtract to get your slope. So we're going to do 6 minus 5. And on the bottom, we're also going to do 6 minus 5. So that comes out to a nice, pretty whole number. Step 2 says, okay, you need to pick one of these ordered pairs to use. So let's use 5, 5 this time. We need to plug that into our point slope formula. So the good news is 5 and 5 go in the first and last space, and of course 1 goes in the middle. And then we just go ahead and solve it. 1 times x is just x. 1 times -5 is -5. Now if I add 5 to both sides, they're both going to make 0. So I can just cross them both out. And my answer is y equals x. We'll go sideways here. It says write the equation. So I want to see an equal sign of a line whose slope is -2 and the y-intercept is 3. So this is where you would crack a smile because I told you both things that you need to know in order to just write the answer. So I can actually use my slope-intercept formula because I know the slope is -2 and the y-intercept is +3. That's my answer. Example 2 gives you 2 points. Again, we want an equation, so I want an equals in your answer. So we're going to have to do 5 minus 4 and then 6 minus 2 to get 1/4. So let's pick 2, 4 to use with our slope. So now we're going to set up our case 2 formula. 4 would go in the first space, 1/4 goes in the middle, and 2 goes in the last. Do a little distributing, and we get 1/4 x minus 1/2. If we add 4 to both sides, we're going to get 1/4 x plus 3.5. And then example 4 says write the equation of a line. So I want to see an equals. The slope is 1/3. The point, a point on the line is 6, 2. So it's a case 2. I met you halfway by giving you the slope, so you don't have to do that work at least. So we're going to set up y minus, in this case, we're using 2 first, equals your slope, parentheses, x minus the x-coordinate of 6. And we're just going to solve that. So I get 1/3 x minus 2. Again, if I add 2 to both sides, they're both going to make 0. So I'm just going to write down 1/3 x. I usually don't write plus 0.